Dad, perfect events. My daughter-in-law called and said, "Your son agreed that my parents are moving into your lake house. If you have a problem with it, sell the place and come back to town." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. But I made sure that when they arrived, they'd find exactly what they deserved. I'm Howard Miller, 58 years old, and I'd worked construction for 32 years to buy that place. Every overtime hour, every weekend job, every lunch eaten from a cooler on a job site, while other guys went to restaurants. All of it went toward one goal, a retirement home on Lake Vermilion, where I could finally hear myself think. The closing papers were spread across the attorney's desk like a promise finally kept. Helen Martinez, the real estate lawyer, watched me sign each document carefully. "Congratulations, Mr. Miller. You're now the owner of one of the nicest properties on Lake Vermilion, $185,000. Every penny I'd saved during decades of 60-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and brown bag, lunches, all of it converted into a 3-bedroom cabin with a dock, a boathouse, and 2 acres of pine forest." I shook her hand and collected the keys. They felt solid in my palm, substantial. The drive north from Duluth took 2 hours on roads that grew progressively narrower and more beautiful. Highway became county road. County road became gravel. Cell service dropped from 4 bars to 2 to 1 flickering signal. I stopped at a bait shop that also sold groceries and picked up coffee, eggs, bread, and butter. The woman at the register asked if I was visiting. "Living," I said. She smiled like I'd passed some kind of test. "You'll love it up here. Quiet as a church." The final mile wound through forest so dense the afternoon sun came through in scattered coins of light. When the lake appeared through the trees, I pulled over and cut the engine. A great blue heron stood motionless at the water's edge. As I watched, it struck the surface and came up with a fish glinting silver in its beak. I sat there for 5 minutes, just breathing. No jackhammers, no car alarms, no shouting from the apartment upstairs. Just wind in the pines and water lapping against the shore. The cabin exceeded the photos. Cedar logs weathered to silver. Stone fireplace climbing the north wall. Wide windows facing the lake. 3 bedrooms seemed excessive for a man alone, but the extra space felt like luxury after decades in cramped city apartments. I unpacked methodically, the way I'd approached every project in my career. Tools arranged on the pegboard in the garage, hammer, wrenches, socket set, each in its designated position, books organized on the built-in shelves, coffee maker positioned on the kitchen counter where morning light would reach it first. By sunset, everything was in place. I made coffee too late in the day, not caring, and carried it to the Adirondack chair on the dock. A family of loons had appeared, their calls echoing across the water like questions and answers. I called my son Bradley. "Dad." His voice came through warm despite the weak signal. "Did you close on the place?" "Sitting on my dock right now watching loons." "That's fantastic. You earned this. 32 years, Dad. You earned every square foot." Something loosened in my chest. Bradley understood. He'd watched me work through his childhood, miss baseball games, fall asleep at the dinner table. He knew what this place represented. "How's everything at home?" I asked. Good. Busy. Patricia's parents have been staying with us while they look for a place. It's been crowded." "How much longer?" "Supposed to be another month, but you know how these things go." We talked for another 10 minutes. His job at the factory, my plans for dock repairs, safe subjects. When we hung up, I watched the last light fade from the sky and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. The phone rang the next evening. I was on the dock again, coffee in hand, watching the sunset paint the water. Orange and gold. The caller ID showed Patricia's number. "Hello, Patricia." "Howard." My daughter-in-law's voice had the clipped tone she used when she wanted something. I'd learned that tone over the 6 years she'd been married to Bradley. "I need to discuss something with you. My parents can't stay in our house anymore. It's too small, and they need somewhere to live. Bradley and I talked about it, and we think the best solution is for them to stay at your lake house for a few months." I set down my coffee very carefully. "I'm sorry?" "It's perfect, really. You have 3 bedrooms. They need somewhere quiet to stay. And honestly, Howard, you're one person rattling around in all that space. It makes sense." "Patricia, I just bought this place yesterday. My parents are stressed. My father has health issues. They need peaceful surroundings. And that cabin is sitting there empty most of the time anyway." "It's not empty. I live here." "You know what I mean." Impatience sharpened her words. "You don't need 3 bedrooms. This is about family helping family. There it was. That phrase I'd heard too many times. Family helping family, which somehow always meant me helping everyone else. Did Bradley agree to this? Bradley understands that sometimes we have to make sacrifices, unlike some people. I looked out at the lake, at the loons gliding across the darkening water. 24 hours. I'd had exactly 24 hours of peace. When are they planning to arrive? Friday. I'll text you their flight information. You can pick them up in Duluth. She paused. And Howard, don't make this difficult. My parents are good people. They deserve a nice place to stay. If you have a problem with it, sell the cabin and come back to town, where you can be useful. The line went dead. I sat there as darkness fell over the lake, listening to the loons call back and forth. My hands weren't shaking. They wanted to, but I wouldn't let them. 32 years I'd been the accommodating one, the one who said yes when he meant no, the one who swallowed resentment to keep the peace. Not this time. I went inside and sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a mechanical pencil, the same tools I'd used for decades of project planning. But this time, I wasn't designing a building. I was designing something else entirely. Morning found me still at the table, surrounded by notes and diagrams. I'd slept 2 hours, maybe 3, but my mind was clear. The first call I made was to the Lake Vermilion Township office. I just purchased property on Anchor Point Road, I told the clerk. I want to understand the regulations around guest occupancy. She explained the township rules patiently. I took detailed notes. When she mentioned the requirement for property owners to register any occupants staying longer than 30 days, I asked her to repeat the exact wording. It's a liability and safety measure. We need to know who's on the properties in case of emergency. Makes perfect sense. Thank you. Next, I called my insurance agent. Jack, I need to discuss the policy on my new lakehouse, specifically the liability coverage and any exclusions related to unregistered occupants. Jack walked me through the details. My policy covered me as the sole resident. Any additional occupants required notification and potential premium adjustment. Unauthorized long-term guests could void my coverage entirely. Why do you ask? Jack said. You planning on having people stay with you? Just being thorough. You know me. That I do. 30 years of policies, never a single claim. You're the most careful man I know. Tuesday, I drove to town and visited the hardware store. The owner helped me find what I needed. Wildlife cameras, I explained. I want to monitor the deer activity near my property. Smart thinking. Lots of folks use these for security too. Motion activated, night vision, sends pictures right to your phone. I bought 3 cameras and a motion activated security light for the driveway. Total cost, $412. I paid cash and got a receipt. Wednesday, I installed the cameras myself. One covering the driveway approach, hidden in the branches of a pine tree. One facing the front door, mounted under the eave of the garage. One pointing at the dock and boathouse. I tested each one, checked the cellular connectivity, adjusted angles until the coverage was complete. Thursday, I made one more trip to town, this time to the office of Thompson & Associates, the only law firm in the area. Carol Peterson was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the direct manner of someone who'd grown up in this part of the country. I explained my situation without emotion, presenting facts. So your daughter-in-law informed you that her parents are arriving Friday to stay in your home. You never agreed to this arrangement. That's correct, and I want to know my legal options. Mr. Miller, you have every legal right to refuse entry to anyone. You choose. This is your property. You have no obligation to house your son's in-laws. What if they arrive anyway? If they refuse to leave after you've clearly asked them to, that's trespassing. You can call the sheriff. I hired her on the spot. $2,000 retainer, which I paid by check. On the drive back to the cabin, I thought about Bradley, my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, watched graduate from high school. He wasn't the problem here. Patricia was the problem. Friday morning arrived cool and overcast. I woke at 5, made coffee, and watched the mist rise off the lake. My phone showed the text Patricia had sent the night before. Mom and Dad, landing Duluth, 11:30. Be there. I didn't reply. At 11:30, I was on my dock reading a book about Minnesota history. At 11:45, my phone buzzed with a call from Patricia. I let it go to voicemail. At 12:15, a text. Where are you? They're waiting at the airport. I continued reading. At 12:47, Bradley called. I answered. Dad, what's going on? Patricia's parents are stranded at the Duluth airport. She said you were supposed to pick them up. I never agreed to pick them up. I never agreed to let them stay here. Silence. Then, Dad, Patricia said. Patricia informed me. Bradley, she didn't ask. There's a difference. They're family, Dad. No, son, they're her family. I met them at your wedding and twice at Christmas. I don't know these people, and I certainly didn't buy a retirement home so strangers could move into it. More silence. I could hear Patricia's voice in the background, sharp and demanding. Dad, please, just for a few weeks. I said no, Bradley. That's my answer. I'm sorry this puts you in an uncomfortable position, but I'm not responsible for promises Patricia made without my consent. I heard him sigh. I'll talk to her. We'll figure something out. Give my best to her parents. Tell them I recommend the Holiday Inn in Duluth. It's very comfortable. I ended the call and went back to my book, but I couldn't concentrate. 2 hours later, the camera at the driveway entrance sent an alert to my phone. A rental car was coming up the road. I watched the feed as the car emerged from the trees and stopped in front of the cabin. 2 people got out, a man and woman in their late 60s, Leonard and Dorothy Adams, Patricia's parents. I'd spoken to them perhaps a dozen times total in 6 years. Leonard looked around with an expression I recognized, appraisal, calculation. Dorothy made a face at the trees, swatting at something in the air. I met them on the porch. Leonard, Dorothy, this is a surprise. Howard. Leonard's handshake was brief and businesslike. Patricia said you'd be here. Sorry about the miscommunication at the airport. We rented a car. There was no miscommunication. I never agreed to pick you up, and I never agreed to have you stay here. Dorothy's face went tight. Excuse me? Patricia said, Patricia doesn't own this. Property? I do. And I'm telling you that you're not staying here. Leonard stepped forward, his voice shifting to a tone I'd heard before. The tone of a man used to getting what he wanted. Now look, Howard, let's be reasonable. We're family. Patricia and Bradley think this is the best solution. And frankly, you're one person in a 3-bedroom house. It's selfish to refuse. I'm selfish. I let the words sit there. I worked 32 years for this place. I ate lunch at my desk while my colleagues went to restaurants. I missed my son's baseball games. I earned this house with decades of sacrifice. And you're calling me selfish for not handing it over to people I barely know. We're not asking for a handout, Dorothy said. We're family. You're strangers who happen to be related to my daughter-in-law. That's not the same thing. Leonard's face reddened. This is ridiculous. Patricia said you'd be difficult, but I didn't believe her. And yet, here we are. I crossed my arms. There's a very nice resort about 40 minutes from here. I recommend it. Now, please leave my property. We're not leaving, Leonard said. We drove 3 hours from Duluth. We're tired, and we have just as much right to be here as you do. No, you don't. I own this property. You don't. And if you refuse to leave, I'll call the sheriff and have you removed for trespassing. Dorothy grabbed Leonard's arm. Let's just go. We'll call Patricia. She'll sort this out. They retreated to their rental car, still arguing with each other. I watched them drive away, then went inside and reviewed the camera footage. Every moment recorded, every word captured. The phone started ringing within the hour. First Patricia, furious. I let it go to voicemail, then Bradley, pleading. I let that one go too. Then Patricia again, leaving a message that was more threat than conversation. You're going to regret this, Howard. You think you can just humiliate my parents and there won't be consequences? We'll see about that. I saved the message. That weekend, Bradley came up alone. He looked exhausted when he got out of his car. We sat on the dock with beers, watching the sunlight sparkle on the water. Patricia wants me to convince you to let her parents stay here, he said finally. That's why she let me come alone. She thinks I can talk you into it. And what do you want, Bradley? He was quiet for a long moment. I want my wife to stop crying every night. I want her parents to find somewhere to live. I want to stop feeling like I'm being pulled apart. That sounds hard. It is? He took a long drink of his beer. Dad, why did you say no? I mean, I understand it's your house, but 3 bedrooms, 1 person. It seemed like it could work. I chose my next words carefully. Bradley, how much money have you given to Patricia's parents in the past year? He went still. Why? Because I hired a private investigator. And what I found concerns me. I pulled Nancy Williams's report from my pocket. Leonard has a gambling problem. Lost $30,000 at the casino in the past 18 months. Dorothy was fired from her last job for stealing merchandise. They've been taking money from you and Patricia for over a year. Bradley took the report with shaking hands. He read it standing there on the dock while the sun moved lower in the sky. She lied to me, he said finally. Patricia told me they just needed help getting back on their feet. She never said... His voice broke. Dad, we've given them $50,000. That was supposed to be Emma's college fund. I know, son, but now you know the truth. What you do with it is up to you. He stayed through Sunday. We didn't talk about Patricia or her parents. We fished, cooked steaks on the grill, watched the loons, simple things, father and son things. When he left Sunday evening, he hugged me for a long time. Thank you for telling me the truth. I love you, son. Whatever happens, remember that. Patricia's retaliation began 10 days later. The first sign was a letter from the Minnesota Department of Human Services. Someone had filed a vulnerable adult report alleging that I was living in unsafe conditions and showing signs of cognitive decline. I called Carol Peterson immediately. This is a common tactic, she said. Family members sometimes weaponize social services to pressure elderly relatives. Stay calm, Howard. You're clearly competent, and your home is obviously well maintained. This will go nowhere. The social worker arrived 2 days later. Linda Anderson was professional and polite. I gave her a tour of the cabin, showed her my organized files, made coffee, and answered her questions clearly. Mr. Miller, I have to ask, is there any family conflict that might have prompted this report? My daughter-in-law wanted her parents to live in my home without my permission. I refused. She threatened consequences. I believe this report is one of those consequences. Linda took notes. That's consistent with the pattern I'm seeing in the report itself. The allegations are very specific in ways that suggest coaching. The investigation closed a week later, unfounded, but I knew Patricia wouldn't stop. The next attack came through Bradley. He called 3 weeks after his visit, and his voice sounded wrong, flat, rehearsed. Dad, I've been thinking, maybe you should consider selling the lakehouse. It's a lot for one person to maintain, and Patricia is worried about your health up there alone. Patricia is worried about my health. We both are. Bradley, are you reading from a script? Silence, then almost a whisper. She's standing right here. I can't... I understand. Tell her I got the message. I ended the call and sat down at the kitchen table. Patricia wasn't just trying to get my property. She was using my son as a weapon against me. The next morning, I called Nancy Williams again. I need more information about my daughter-in-law, financial situation, employment history, anything you can find. The report arrived a week later. Patricia had been fired from her retail job 4 months ago for employee theft. She hadn't told Bradley. She'd been withdrawing money from their joint accounts to maintain the illusion of income while actually funding her parents' lifestyle. The total now exceeded $60,000. I sent Bradley an email with the report attached. Subject line, "You deserve to know." The phone call came 6 hours later. "It's true," Bradley said. His voice was hollow. I confronted her. She admitted everything, the job, the money, the lies. "I'm sorry, son. She's been lying to me for months, Dad, about everything. And when I asked why she filed that report against you, she said you deserved it for embarrassing her parents. What are you going to do?" A long pause. "I don't know yet, but I needed to call you to say I'm sorry for not believing you, for letting her use me against you. You have nothing to apologize for. You trusted your wife. That's what you were supposed to do." The divorce papers were filed 6 weeks later. Bradley called to tell me himself. I asked her to leave. She's staying with her parents at a motel. Her attorney already contacted mine. "How are you holding up?" "Honestly, better than I expected. It's like a weight lifted when I finally accepted what she was." He paused. "I found more, Dad. Bank accounts I didn't know about. Credit cards taken out in my name. It's going to take years to sort out. Come up this weekend, bring a fishing rod." "I'd like that." Bradley arrived Friday evening, looking thinner but somehow stronger. The hunted look was gone from his eyes. We spent Saturday on the lake catching walleye and smallmouth bass, not talking about lawyers or divorce proceedings. Just fishing, just being together. That evening, as we grilled our catch, Bradley said something that surprised me. I want to move up here, not here exactly, but somewhere nearby. There's a factory in Duluth that's hiring supervisors. I already had a phone interview. He looked out at the lake. I need a fresh start, Dad, away from everything that reminds me of her. What about Emma? I'm getting primary custody. Patricia can't provide a stable home anymore, and Emma loves it up here. What do you think? He asked. I think you're a grown man who can make his own decisions, and I think having you nearby would make me very happy. His smile was the first genuine one I'd seen from him in months. 2 months later, Bradley took the job in Duluth and found an apartment with a view of Lake Superior. He drove up to the cabin most weekends with Emma, sometimes to fish, sometimes just to sit on the dock and talk. The divorce finalized in December. Patricia got the furniture and her parents' outstanding debts. Bradley got his freedom and what remained of his savings. Spring came slowly to Lake Vermilion. The ice melted in April, and by May the loons were back. I was on the dock one Saturday morning when Bradley's car came up the driveway. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman got out of the passenger side, tall, dark-haired, with an easy smile. Dad, Bradley said as they walked toward me, this is Susan. We work together at the factory. I've told her a lot about you. Susan shook my hand firmly. He says you're the most stubborn man in Minnesota. He means it as a compliment. We spent the day on the lake, the three of us. Bradley showed Susan how to cast, how to read the water, how to be patient. She wasn't particularly good at it, but she laughed at her mistakes and tried again. That evening, while Susan explored the shoreline, Bradley sat next to me on the dock. What do you think? I think she's nothing like Patricia. No, he agreed. She's not. Then I think you should keep seeing her. A year passed. Bradley and Susan got engaged. They bought a small house in Duluth with a yard. The wedding was small, held at a restaurant, overlooking Lake Superior on a clear September day. I gave a toast that made everyone laugh and Susan cry. That autumn, I stood on my dock in the early morning, watching mist rise from the lake. I thought about the year I'd had, the battle I'd fought to keep this place, the pain of watching my son's marriage collapse, the joy of watching him rebuild his life. None of it had gone the way I'd planned. I'd bought this cabin for solitude, for peace. Instead, I'd gotten conflict and drama. But I'd also gotten something I hadn't expected, a closer relationship with my son. Maybe peace isn't about being alone. Maybe it's about being with the right people. Bradley and Susan drove up that weekend with Emma. We took the boat out and fished until sunset, then grilled walleye on the deck while the loons called across the water. We've been talking, Susan said as we ate, about the future, about family. I looked at Bradley. He was smiling. We're hoping to have kids someday. And when we do, I want them to know this place, to spend summers here, learning to fish, watching the eagles. I want them to know their grandfather. I had to look away for a moment, out at the lake, at the last light fading behind the pines. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. After they left Sunday evening, I sat on the dock until full dark, listening to the loons, watching the stars emerge one by one. 32 years of work had bought me this cabin, but what I'd built in the years since was worth more. A son who trusted me, a future daughter-in-law who respected me, the promise of grandchildren who would learn to love this place the way I did. Patricia and her parents had tried to take it all away. They'd used manipulation, lies, legal threats, and they'd failed. Not because I was smarter or richer, but because I'd refused to compromise my principles. I'd said no when everyone expected yes. I'd chosen truth over easy lies. And in the end, I'd gained more than I'd ever imagined. I stood up, stretched my old bones, and walked inside. The cabin door closed softly behind me, but the real door, the one I'd opened by standing my ground, would stay open forever. Inside, I picked up the phone to call Bradley, just to say goodnight, just because I could. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is teaching them that love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It means having the courage to say no when it protects what truly matters. I learned that standing your ground isn't about being stubborn or selfish. It's about showing the people you love that principles matter more than peace, and that real family respects boundaries instead of trying to destroy them.